Hello students, I am Dr. Saleha Jamal, Faculty Department of Geography, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Welcome to the class. So, we are again here with the course Climate Change Vulnerability and Adaptation, and today's topic of discussion is influence of climate on settlement patterns of humans. We are in the lecture of how demography is being affected by the climates. In that we are studying in different sections. Now today in this class we will study how the climate and settlement patterns are related and actually how the climate change is impacting this settlement pattern. We know that climate has had a significant impact on how population settle around the world. If we see the different pockets of the world, we find somewhere it is the population or the settlement are sparsely scattered, and at some places we see the dense settlements. So there are reasons behind that, why at some places it has sparse settlements or somewhat dispersed settlements, and in some places we find the density of the settlement is very high. So generally the climate impacts the settlements in various ways. Mainly it impacts the kind of structure the societies may erect. Means if we are talking about the kind of structure the societies may affect, that is in terms of the spatial distribution, in terms of the structures of the building, density of the buildings, living places, etc. Not only this, the areas in which they can flourish, the settlement can flourish. We know for the settlement to flourish, there is the need of certain resources. Maybe in terms of the water supply is needed, not only the good resources are needed, and most prominent the conducive living environment. We are talking about the climate is required. There only the settlements can flourish. We will take example later on in this lecture. Then we can see it also impacts the socio-economic behaviors which the communities embrace, because we know different types of climatic conditions reveals the communities with different socio-economic behaviors. Maybe the regions which is having a rich resource in terms of the soil. If the soil fertility is very good, there we can find the agricultural economic activity. Where the mineral rich resources, we can find the industrial activity. Mainly in the coastal regions we can find the fishing is very much prominent. So overall it also the climatic factors reveals the socio-economic behaviors of the communities generally they embrace. If we see from the past times, early from the hunter-gatherer communities, which are mainly dependent on the basic resources like food, cloth and shelter, means from early times now to advanced urban civilization, with the basic needs they also need various luxuries. Both in this, from past to the present advanced urban civilization, the availability of resources play a very important role in terms of the water resource, fertile land, favorable weather condition that has dictated the rise and fall of the societies. If we see the early human settlements and the climate relationship, we see mainly all the early settlements were found in the areas of conducive climatic condition, that is hospitable climatic condition, mostly in the temperate zones having the distinct seasons. If we see the ancient civilizations, mainly the river valley civilizations, for example you can take Nile in Egypt, the Tigris and the Euphrates in Mesopotamia, the Indus in South Asia. All these regions' climate supported agriculture. Why it supported agriculture? Because of availability of the fertile soil and consistent supply of the water in these regions. Means overall we can say these civilizations flourished due to the conducive climatic conditions and because of the resources like good fertile soil, consistent water supply, etc. So because of this consistent seasonal patterns which facilitated the growth of farming and establishment of the permanent settlement, these areas mainly became the birthplace of civilization. Not only we are talking about now, but overall from the previous civilization, even before that, from the hunters and gatherers to the present more advanced urbanized societies and communities, we see the climate is playing a very significant role in their settlement pattern. This is just how the Egyptian civilization, there is a, we can see. Now the tropical regions, how we are viewing the settlement, the pattern in the different climatic zones. So if we talk about the tropical regions, mainly which is closer to the equator, in short we can say equatorial region, which is mainly identified by the high amount of rainfall which sustain a lush green vegetation that is known as rainforest vegetation, mainly in the tropical areas, mostly near to the equator. These type of condition that create a distinctive pattern of the settlement. Mainly if we see the communities in the Amazon, Congo basins, these communities are living, mainly they are of indigenous people, mostly they are hunters and gatherers, but still they are living in the small and uh, dispersed settlements and mainly dependent upon the hunting and subsistence farming. Although what I have talked about, the copious amount of rainfall, high temperature, humidity that favors the lush green vegetation, that favors the dense forest and high biodiversity, which provide wealth of resources, but still people for their settlement, people in order to live, they need adaptive techniques and the structures in order to withstand with high humidity and the rainfall which is lacking. That's why these regions have the smaller and the dispersed settlements. This is a view of somewhat we can say smaller and dispersed settlements of the equatorial region. Mainly you can see it is blessed with the lush green vegetation, but still they need adaptive techniques in order to withstand with the high humidity and the rainfall. Another region, climatic zone, we talk about the arid and the semi-arid region. Mostly in these regions, we know that evaporation exceeds precipitation. These regions are mainly identified by the extreme temperatures and limited water supplies, because I have said here the evaporation exceeds precipitation because of the extreme temperature, and they are mainly characterized by the dry and semi-arid location. Example, Arabian Peninsula, Sahara Desert of Africa, parts of Australia, etc. You can take the example. These areas have limited population of people, mainly these population, or we can say settlement, we can found around the ground, either around the groundwater supplies, river system, or even around the oasis. The buildings in these regions, they are mainly constructed with the thick walls, few windows in order to keep inside more cool the temperature down and reflecting the adaptability towards the heat. So this is a different type of settlement pattern you can observe in arid and semi-arid region because of the dry spells, extreme temperature and water shortages. Here you can view, this is somewhat we can say semi-arid region settlement, which is dispersed and scattered, and mainly it is located either around the river system or either around the oasis or groundwater supplies. Now coming to the another climatic zone, that is the temperature zone. It is said one of the best climate for the human habitation. Why it is said as one of the best climate for human settlement? Because of it is situated between the tropics and the polar region, and it is mainly characterized by the well-defined seasons and mild temperature, which is the one of the most major requirement of the people. People don't like to live in harsh temperature, harsh living condition. So these temperate zone provide well-defined seasons with mild temperatures. You can take the one of the densest populated pockets of the world. For example, Asia, particularly the South and East Asia. If we talk about the Europe, the western countries of the Europe, the western part of the Europe you can see, and even North America. When we talk about the North America, mostly the northeastern part of the America. Over the time, the dense population centers and urbanizations have resulted from these regions, the strong agricultural yields and the biodiversity. The major centers have emerged over the time, like big cities and sophisticated infrastructure. These are both, we can say, the reflection of both high population densities and the economic wealth of the region. So that is why this is one of the best climate for human habitation. You can say the temperate region settlement. Another, now viewing the settlement pattern, how the climate is impacting the different zones, the different regions of this planet Earth, how the climate is impacting. We will discuss those impacts with relation to Indian settlement patterns, India. For example, in India, we find in the northern plains, which are the most densely populated pocket of India. Why it is one of the most densely pocket? Because it has distinctive summer season, winter season, monsoon season, and mainly it stretches, if we see in the states of Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal. If we see in few of the states like Bihar, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, these are one of the densest populated states of the India. And this region is blessed by the subtropical climate, and mainly it supports the agricultural community because it is blessed with the fertile alluvial soil, mainly in the newer alluvial soil, that is the Khadar. It also receives copious amounts of water from in the monsoon season. Not only after the monsoon season, it receives water from the rivers like Ganga, Yamuna, Brahmaputra, which are mainly fed by the we can say melting glaciers, and mostly the small towns and the villages are the reflection of the mainly the agricultural economy of these region. And these resource rich plain in these resource rich plains, various urban centers have also emerged, such like Delhi, Kolkata, Patna, which has developed as administrative and commercial center. So this is one of the, we can say, most prominent, we can say climate friendly region. That's why here we can say population density is very high, and settlement of northern plains, you can see here how much compact population is in the pockets, you can see. Similarly, if we talk about the coastal regions in India, the eastern coast and the western coast, which has a tropical monsoon climate with high humidity and the seasonal rainfall along the coastline, and this region mainly stretches from the Bay of Bengal to the east, and if we talk about the west, Arabian Sea to the west, and the states like Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Western Ghat region, in these states they receive a lot of rainfall due to the Arabian, we can say Arabian monsoon, Arabian Sea monsoon branch, and due to this region sustain agriculture and beautiful greenery, so much so that even it is one of the hotspot, biodiversity hotspot. So that's why this area is also densely populated with mix of certain cities with emerged with time like Mumbai, Chennai, Kochi, as well as several rural and farming areas. If we see, mostly the agriculture, fishing and trade are the main drivers of the coastal economy, and even the availability of the ports, they are acting as the hub for both economic growth and the population settlement. So this is also one of the, we can say, it provide a conducive environment for the human settlements. A coastal village in the Konkan region in India, you can see even the compact settlement can be observed in this region. Now talking about the desert region of India, because we know if we talk about the desert, certainly the image comes water scarcity, extreme weather condition, and here we are talking about the tropical desert like Thar desert of India, means we are talking about extreme temperature in high temperature, and also water scarcity, high rate of evaporation. So these all harsh climatic condition results in low population number and one of the distinctive forms of the settlement. So people generally live here around the oases or mainly close to the temporary water supplies. Settlement patterns are sparse and dispersed, and even as we know, the climate also reflects the socioeconomic behavior. So mostly the population, if we see population ancient, is of ancient semi-nomadic lifestyle, mainly depends upon the subsistent farming, livestock husbandry, and even they live in traditional mud and stone shelters in order to protect them from the severe heat. But still there are several cities which has emerged at one of the developed and urban centers like Jaisalmer, Bikaner, Jodhpur, which are the important desert cities that function as the historical and commercial hubs. If we observe similarly about the mountains and the hilly regions like the Himalayas, or we can say if we are talking about the Eastern Ghats, so mountains and hilly regions, these are mainly blessed with the temperate to alpine climate. So in this region, few of the states like Jammu, Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and the parts of northeast states that comes under this region. Here, as they are the mountainous region and they suffer with the lots of problems like soil erosion, we can say severe runoff, due to which even the water scarcity also is observed in various regions. There is connectivity problem. So settlements are generally clustered in valleys where more hospitable climatic conditions are found, and even because of the agricultural productivity, which is mainly constrained by the cold winters and brief pleasant summer. Homes are generally constructed with the materials like stone or wood in order to resist the cold temperature. And here we can find, as again I am saying, that the proper regions and the climate, they reflect the socioeconomic behavior. So here we can find terrace farming is very much widespread, and some of the important towns have also emerged with the time like Gangtok, Srinagar, Shimla, which are acting as a commercial and administrative hub. So overall here also the population is not very much dense, but we can say somewhat between. Settlement in the hilly areas, you can see in some of the hill station we find dense population, but in most of the hilly areas the population is somewhat dispersed and scattered. If we talk about the Deccan Plateau of India, like state of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, which has a tropical semi-arid climate, mainly it is identified now with the water scarcity, and here the settlements generally, that's why they live close to the river areas with water availability, groundwater availability. So here we can see that few of the urban centers like Hyderabad, Bengaluru and Pune, which are very much well known in the recent decades, but yet water shortage is still a major problem of Deccan Plateau for supporting the huge population. So Deccan Plateau has another pattern because of the semi-arid region, and it is now great. It was in news fewer days before, few of the region was just near to the 0 day for the water even. So water shortage is still a very major problem here for supporting the huge population. Now what, after taking the India as an example to see the impacts of climate on the human patterns, how the impact of climate change on the settlement patterns overall it can be visualized. Simply you can see mainly the climate, if we talk about the climate change, we generally think about the global warming, temperature rise. When the temperature rise comes in mind, the snow melting, the glaciers melting, sea level rise, thermal expansion of the ocean water, these are all comes in mind one by one. So certainly the most vulnerable areas with respect to the human settlement, we can see the global coastal cities which are mostly under the threat, and they are more vulnerable because of rising of sea level, and which is driving people to migrate in the low-lying areas. So here generally the population are forced to relocate because of the changes in the precipitation pattern, temperature extremes, increase in the frequency of the coastal flooding, hurricanes, storm surges, etc., which is even changing the agricultural pattern or water supply pattern. So people generally relocate from the climate vulnerable areas to the urban areas, mainly generating the mega cities, which is again posing some other problems on the infrastructure, putting more pressure on the infrastructure and the sustainable development. So this climate change and shifts in the settlement pattern, if we visualize in India, the rising sea levels, even the more frequent flooding in the coastal areas like Chennai, Mumbai, here forcing most of the residents to relocate on the higher ground in order to save themselves from these coastal floodings, hurricanes, storms, etc. Even in the areas of extreme heat, we can say like droughts in the dry regions, those are also compelling the people to migrate in the cities where they get the better opportunities of employment and the resource supplies. Similar is the case with the Deccan Plateau water scarcity. Nowadays we can see that is rising day by day. That has caused crop patterns to change and a greater reliance on the groundwater, which has impact on the population dynamics as the urban centers are growing. Overall, if we talk about the most vulnerable area is the coastal area. So talking about in terms of the coastal retreats and rising sea level all over the globe, not only in the India, these are one of the most vulnerable regions impacted by the climate change. You may take example of Miami, New York, Jakarta, Dhaka are among the low-lying coastal cities that are more vulnerable to regular flooding, storm surges, and even the land erosion. As a result, communities are gradually migrating, moving farther inland in certain cities. For example, in Jakarta, which is the capital of Indonesia, it is preparing to relocate inland on the island of Borneo, whole city to relocate on the island of Borneo, as the city is becoming more vulnerable and uninhabitable due to the flooding. So this is the data regarding the number of people which is displaced due to the disaster worldwide till 2022. If we visualize this data, this graph, what you will find, most of the displacement occurred due to the certain extreme weather events, mostly due to the flood. Just visualize is mostly due to the flood, typhoon, tropical cyclone, rainy season, tropical cyclone, flood, typhoon, flood, typhoon. You can see cyclone, monsoon, tropical cyclone, flood, super typhoon. So most of the displacement is due to the extreme weather events, mostly in the coastal areas, and also some of the due to the dry condition prevailing for the long time, such as for the drought. So these are the two extreme, we can say, conditions like flood, storm, hurricanes, and the drought. These are the few of the conditions which are making the few of the places more vulnerable, mostly the semi-arid and arid regions, and mostly the coastal land. So here the people are displaced due to the disasters overall worldwide. So migration from after seeing the migration from the coastal areas, another we can also observe the migration is also taking place. The shift of the settlement pattern is taking place from the arid and the semi-arid areas. Overall, we can say drought-prone areas. The rising temperature and shifting precipitation patterns are causing extended droughts in various regions. Here you can take example of Western United States, Middle East, and the parts of the North Africa. So these are the most affected, most vulnerable region. Here many people have been forced to relocate with more water because of the negative impacts has led to the various changes in the agriculture, water supply, general livability. Even due to the desertification, people in the Sahel region of Africa, already it is, this is a dry region, one of the desert region, Sahel region of Africa, they are migrating to cities located with the greater agricultural prospects. Even another example you can take water scarcity and the Colorado River Basin in the United States. It is also having an impact on the migratory trend. So all these things, we are talking about the floods, sea level rise, we are talking about the droughts, mainly in the drought prone areas. These conditions compel people to shift from one place to the another in search of better employment opportunities and better resource supplies. Not only the drought prone areas, in many of the areas, mostly in the urbanized areas, heat waves and urban migration is observed. For example, there is a temperature difference between the city and its surrounding. If we talk about this, temperature difference is around 3 degree to 12 degree. It can vary from 3 degrees centigrade to 12 degrees centigrades from the city to the surrounding suburban areas and to the rural areas. So actually the urban centers, they are day by day, they are becoming the urban heat island with higher temperature conditions as compared to the suburban areas or the rural areas. So extreme heat events are making the cities of the nations, if we talk about India, Pakistan and part of the Middle East, most hazardous, raising various health risks and displacing the urban population. So this type of migration, generally it is observed in various sectors, mostly the lower income group who do not have access to various resources. They used to shift where they get better job opportunities, and even they rely on some of the adaptation or mitigation that is generally provided by the government or non-governmental organizations. In Indian cities like Delhi, Ahmedabad, Kolkata, even we see some of the workers, mainly from the informal sectors like construction, agriculture, they usually move back to the rural areas in the peak summer when the condition outdoor becomes unbearable for them. Not only this, if we see the worldwide, like in USA, the cities mostly affected by the heat waves like Phoenix, Las Vegas, Miami, where permanent migration is not common, but still there are signs of increased seasonal migration due to the cooler. Mainly the seasonal migration takes place to the cooler regions during the summer months. So not only in the case of these countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, but even seasonal pattern of migration, and even in many places permanent migration we can see due to this increased or rising temperature. So this is all how we can say climate change is impacting the human settlement in various ways. We have seen, just give a quick review, students, we have seen how the settlement that they flourished from the early ancient time to the present advanced urban civilizations. We have seen mainly it has flourished where the conducive climate is available for the human beings. Then we have seen how the different climatic condition impact the settlement pattern. For example, in the tropical region with the scattered and dispersed settlement, in the arid and the semi-arid region again with the scattered and the small and dispersed settlement. Best conducive, best climate for human habitation, that is the temperate zones. That why most of the densely populated areas of the world, regions of the world, they are generally found in the temperate zone, like we can say South and East Asia, western part of the Europe and the North America. Then how all different types of pattern, as we know, we have seen through the example of India, how the different climatic condition impact the settlement pattern in India. That is most densely populated states are generally located in the northern plains, the reasons it conducive climatic condition and availability of, we can say, fertile soil. Similarly, how the coastal region human settlement that is impacted by the climate. We have seen the desert region, then the mountainous and the hilly regions, the Deccan Plateau again that is impacted by the water scarcity. So overall the impact of climate change on the settlement pattern, we have seen two regions emerged most vulnerable, and we can say coastal regions and the drought or arid and the semi-arid area. They are most vulnerable, and mostly shifting is taking place from the coastal low-lying areas to the higher ground, or from the drought or that is the drought prone areas or the arid areas to the places where having the better resource supply and the better opportunities. Even we have seen the seasonal migration in various places also take place, and there is also migration due to the urban heat or due to the emergence of the urban heat island, either seasonal migration or either we can say permanent migration. Generally the seasonal migration are observed among the construction workers, agricultural workers, when the condition outdoor becomes mostly the unbearable. So seasonal patterns can be seen in the USA. The cities are mostly affected by the heat wave. We have already taken the example of Phoenix, Las Vegas and the Miami, where seasonal migration to cooler regions during the summer months is very much prominent. So that's all for today's lecture. Have a nice day, students. Thank you.